I clutch the steering wheel of my 10-year-old Honda as I pull into the circular driveway of Hawthorne Estate, the family home I haven't seen in 7 years. My stomach knots as the imposing brick mansion comes into view, its windows watching me like judgmental eyes. The last time I stood on these steps, my father's voice thundered behind me. "If you walk out that door, don't expect anything from this family ever again." Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Today, I return not as the defiant daughter who left, but as Dr. Elena Mercer, trauma surgeon, though to the people waiting inside, I'm still just the family disappointment. The irony isn't lost on me that it took my father's death to bring me back to the place he made clear I no longer belonged. My 7-year-old daughter Lily unbuckles herself in the back seat, her curious eyes taking in the sprawling estate. "Is this where Grandpa lived, Mom? It's like a castle." Her excitement pierces my dread, momentarily lifting the weight pressing against my chest. "Yes, sweetie, this is where I grew up." The words feel strange in my mouth, like speaking a language I've nearly forgotten. Will Aunt Victoria be nice? You never talk about her. Lily's innocent question hangs in the air between us. Will she be nice? My sister Victoria, the golden child, the perfect daughter who stayed and inherited the family business, and apparently everything else my father owned. The sister who didn't once call during my grueling years of medical school, my divorce, or the birth of my daughter. She's different from me, I finally answer, unable to find a more honest response that wouldn't burden my daughter with ancient family wounds. As we approach the entrance, the massive oak door swings open. There stands Victoria, immaculate in a black designer dress, not a strand of her chestnut hair out of place despite having buried our father just yesterday. A funeral I learned about too late to attend, courtesy of her oversight in notification. "Elena, what a surprise." Her voice carries the practiced warmth of someone greeting a business associate rather than a sister. Her gaze drops to Lily, momentary confusion crossing her features. And this must be my daughter, Lily. The protective instinct surges within me. "Your niece." Something flashes in Victoria's eyes. Surprise. Perhaps even a hint of hurt that she hadn't known of Lily's existence. But it vanishes quickly behind her practiced smile. Well, this is certainly unexpected. The reading of the will was yesterday. Of course it was. "We're not here for money, Victoria. I came to say goodbye to Dad, even if it's too late for the funeral. And Lily deserved to see where her mother grew up just once." Victoria's perfectly sculpted eyebrows rise slightly. "How thoughtful. Please come in." Although most of the estate is already being prepared for sale or donation, Father's wishes. The grand foyer feels smaller than I remember, though no less opulent. Crystal chandeliers still cast rainbow prisms across marble floors. The portrait of my mother, gone 15 years now, still hangs above the sweeping staircase, her gentle eyes seeming to follow me as I enter what had once been my home. Lily gasps beside me, her hand tightening around mine. "Mom, it's beautiful. Like a museum." "Yes, darling, rather like a museum," Victoria interjects with a tight smile. "Full of precious things not to be touched." The warning in her words isn't subtle. This place, these memories, my family history, none of it belongs to me anymore. Perhaps it never did. "We won't be staying long," I assure her, forcing professionalism into my voice, the same tone I use when delivering difficult news to patients' families. Detached, clinical, protected. Tea is being served in the solarium. Father's attorney, Mr. Whitmore, is still here sorting through some final papers. He mentioned there might be a few personal effects for you, though most items of significance were specifically bequeathed. I I follow Victoria through familiar hallways, each step surfacing memories I'd carefully buried. The study where Dad would work late into the night, the doors firmly closed against interruption. The music room where I spent countless hours at, the piano, desperately seeking the perfection that might finally earn his approval, the small alcove where Mom would read to me before her illness took her away forever. Lily takes it all in with wide-eyed wonder, unaware of how these beautiful rooms once felt like elegant prisons to her mother. My chest tightens thinking of how her childhood differs from mine, her tiny apartment bedroom filled with laughter and bedtime stories, so unlike my spacious but sterile upbringing. The solarium remains exactly as I remember, a cathedral of glass and wrought iron, filled with exotic plants my mother once tended with loving care. After her death, Dad hired gardeners to maintain it precisely as she left it, a greenhouse mausoleum, to her memory. A tall, silver-haired man rises from one of the wicker chairs as we enter. Ms. Mercer, what an unexpected pleasure. I'm Richard Whitmore. I handled your father's affairs for nearly 30 years. It's Dr. Mercer, actually. I correct him gently, extending my hand. Though I understand the confusion. The last time we met, I was still in pre-med. Something like embarrassment flickers across Victoria's face. Elena completed medical school. She's a surgeon now. The surprise in Mr. Whitmore's eyes is unmistakable. Indeed? Your father never mentioned— We weren't in contact, I interrupt, sparing us all the awkward elaboration. This is my daughter, Lily. Hello, Lily says with the polite smile I've taught her, though she's already distracted by the colorful tropical flowers surrounding us. Lily, why don't you look at the flowers while the grown-ups talk? Just remember, look with your eyes, not with your hands, I tell her, echoing the phrase my own mother used with me in this very room decades ago. As Lily wanders off to examine a blooming orchid, I turn back to Mr. Whitmore. Victoria mentioned there might be some personal effects. Yes, indeed. He retrieves a leather portfolio from the table. The formal reading was yesterday, as I'm sure your sister informed you. The estate distribution was quite straightforward. Hawthorne Industries and the majority of financial assets transfer to Victoria as the active company president. The charitable foundation receives its designated portion. The house will be sold, with proceeds divided according to your father's specifications. Each word confirms what I already knew, that my father's final act was to reinforce that I was no longer considered family. I maintain my composure, the way I do when a surgery takes an unexpected turn. Stay focused. Emotions help no one. However, Mr. Whitmore continues, there were a few personal items designated for you. He hands me a sealed envelope. Your father's instructions were to give you this directly. The envelope is heavy, cream-colored stationery with Elena, written in my father's precise handwriting. Inside is a safety deposit box key and a brief note. What your mother wanted you to have. RHM. My father's initials, not Dad or even father. Robert Harrison Mercer, businessman to the end. There's one other matter, Mr. Whitmore adds, glancing between Victoria and me with sudden discomfort. A letter arrived this morning by courier. From your grandmother, Margaret Mercer. Victoria's teacup freezes halfway to her lips. Grandmother? That's impossible. She passed away 3 years ago. Yes, Mr. Whitmore confirms. But apparently she left instructions with her attorney to deliver this letter upon your father's death. He produces another envelope, this one showing signs of age, the paper yellowed slightly at the edges. It's addressed to both of you. Victoria reaches for the letter, but Mr. Whitmore holds it back. Mrs. Mercer's instructions were quite specific. The letter must be opened and read in the presence of both sisters simultaneously. A heavy silence descends upon the room. Grandmother Margaret, my father's mother, had been a formidable woman, the true architect of the Hawthorne fortune through her shrewd business instincts and unwavering determination. While she and my father had a notoriously strained relationship, she had always shown particular interest in both Victoria and me, encouraging our education and independence in ways my traditional father never did. Well? Victoria extends her hand impatiently. Let's get this over with. Mr. Whitmore hands me the letter instead. As both parties are now present, you may proceed. The envelope feels unnaturally heavy in my hands. What final words could our grandmother have possibly left that needed to wait until our father was gone? I break the wax seal carefully and unfold the thick parchment inside. Read it aloud, Victoria instructs, her voice tight with poorly disguised anxiety. I clear my throat and begin. My dearest granddaughters, Victoria and Elena, if you are reading this, then Robert has finally departed this world, hopefully having made peace with his many mistakes, though knowing my son, I rather doubt it. I have always believed that the truth, however painful, is preferable to comfortable lies. It is in this spirit that I must now reveal what your father has kept hidden for decades. Hawthorne Industries was never solely Robert's to inherit or bequeath. My father, your great-grandfather, established in the original company charter that ownership must pass to all direct descendants, not merely those chosen by the current chief executive. Your father manipulated this provision after my husband's death, using legal maneuvering to consolidate control, effectively disinheriting my other son, your Uncle Thomas, whom many of you believe abandoned the family voluntarily. This arrangement was always meant to be temporary, a fact your father conveniently chose to forget. The legal documentation proving the true ownership structure has been preserved with my personal attorney all these years, awaiting this very moment. I pause, my hands beginning to tremble as the implications become clear. Victoria has gone completely still, her face drained of color. In accordance with the original charter, I continue reading, Hawthorne Industries rightfully belongs, in equal shares to all living direct descendants of the founding family. This includes both of you, my beloved granddaughters, regardless of your chosen paths in life or your father's personal judgments. Victoria, your business acumen has been evident since childhood, but true leadership requires more than just ambition. Elena, your compassion and courage in forging your own path despite terrible obstacles reflects the independent spirit that built our family legacy. Neither quality is complete without the other. Neither sister is more deserving than the other. The legal documents restoring the proper ownership structure are enclosed. Mr. Whitmore, if he is still serving as family attorney, can verify their authenticity and legal standing. Remember that wealth without purpose is merely excess, and power without compassion becomes tyranny. Whatever divisions exist between you were fostered by your father's misconceptions about strength and worth. They need not define your futures. With eternal love and the wisdom that only comes too late in life, your grandmother, Margaret Eleanor Hawthorne Mercer. As I finish reading, my throat tight with emotion, Mr. Whitmore clears his throat. There are indeed legal documents attached. At a glance, they appear to be in order, though I'll need to review them thoroughly. Victoria's face has transformed from shock to cold fury. This is absurd. A convenient letter appears just after father's death, supposedly from a woman who can't defend its authenticity. I've operated Hawthorne Industries for the past decade while Elena was... She stops abruptly. While I was what, Victoria? Working 30-hour shifts to save lives? Raising my daughter alone after my husband couldn't handle being married to someone more accomplished than him? Please, finish your thought. Our eyes lock across the sunlit room where we once played as children, before competition for our father's approval poisoned everything between us. In her gaze, I see not just anger but fear, the fear of losing something she's defined herself by completely. Lily returns to my side, sensing the tension. Mom, are you okay? I place a protective arm around her shoulders. Yes, sweetheart. Just some grown-up business. I look back at Victoria and Mr. Whitmore. I didn't come here for money or ownership. Stakes. I came for closure, but it seems grandmother had other ideas about justice. This will be tied up in courts for years, Victoria warns, her composure returning. Father's will was explicit. Actually, Mr. Whitmore interjects tentatively, preliminary examination suggests Mrs. Mercer's documentation supersedes your father's arrangements. The original charter does indeed contain these provisions. Victoria's teacup clatters against its saucer. This meeting is over. Mr. Whitmore, I expect you in my office tomorrow morning to discuss our legal options. As she rises to leave, I notice something I've never seen before in my always perfect sister: uncertainty. For the first time in our adult lives, Victoria doesn't hold all the power, doesn't control the narrative. Victoria, I call as she reaches the doorway. I have no interest in taking over your position at the company. That's always been your passion, not mine. But I won't be erased from my own family history either. She pauses without turning. You walked away, Elena. You made your choice. I chose not to be diminished. There's a difference. Victoria leaves without another word, her heels clicking sharply against the marble floor. The sound echoes through the solarium like the period at the end of a declarative sentence. Mr. Whitmore begins gathering his papers. Dr. Mercer, where are you staying? We should schedule a proper meeting to discuss these developments. We're at the Lakeside Inn through the weekend. That's all the time I could take away from the hospital. I fold my grandmother's letter carefully. Something like hope flickering to life inside me after years of resignation. As Lily and I prepare to leave, I take one last look around the solarium. The afternoon sun streams through the glass ceiling, illuminating dust motes dancing in the air. My mother loved this room because, as she once told me, even in winter, life continues to grow here. Perhaps after all this time, something new might grow between my sister and me as well. If not affection, then at least understanding. And, if not understanding, then respect. Either way, I am no longer the disinherited daughter standing in the rain. I am Dr. Elena Mercer, who built a life on her own terms. A life that, thanks to my grandmother's final intervention, now includes reclaiming a piece of my history I thought forever lost. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. The Lakeside Inn hardly deserved its idyllic name. The faded two-story motel sat a good quarter-mile from any visible water, its promised lake view consisting of a distant shimmer between overgrown trees. But it had been the only accommodation available on short notice in Hawthorne Springs, the small but affluent town that existed largely because of my family's company. I spread the contents of Grandmother Margaret's letter across the worn bedspread, while Lily slept in the adjacent twin bed, her breathing deep and peaceful. The documents were overwhelming in their detail and implications: corporation bylaws, trust agreements, handwritten journals from my great-grandfather, and a personal letter from grandmother to me specifically. My phone vibrated with an incoming call, unknown number. Hello? I answered quietly, moving toward the bathroom to avoid waking Lily. Elena? It's Olivia Chen. I froze. Olivia had been my closest friend growing up, until my departure created a schism that had never healed. As the daughter of my father's chief financial officer, Olivia had found herself caught between loyalty to Hawthorne Industries and our friendship. Olivia. This is unexpected. I heard you were back. Her voice carried the slightest tremor. News travels fast in small places, especially news like this. Like what exactly? I leaned against the bathroom door, suddenly exhausted. Like Robert Mercer's disinherited daughter returning the day after his funeral with the child no one knew existed, then leaving the estate with Margaret's letter, which apparently threatens to overturn everything Victoria has built. A pause. That kind of news. Of course, the Hawthorne grapevine remained efficient as ever. It wasn't my intention to create drama, Olivia. I just wanted closure. Intentions rarely matter in this town, you know that. The familiar wryness in her tone transported me back to our teenage years, when we'd dissect the town's social politics with cynical precision. But that's not why I'm calling. I thought you might need a friend, or at least a neutral party. I'm still at Chen & Associates. My father retired last year. The accounting firm that had served Hawthorne Industries for generations. You followed? In the family business, after all. Some of us didn't have the courage to break away. No judgment in her voice, just stating a fact. I've maintained the historical financial records for both the company and your grandmother's personal accounts. There's more to this situation than what's in that letter, Elena. My pulse quickened. What do you mean? Not over the phone. Can you meet me tomorrow? There's a coffee shop on Maple Street. New place, opened after you left. Called Grounds. For thought. 9 o'clock? I need to take Lily to the Children's Museum in the morning. Victoria might not welcome us at the estate again. Perfect. Olivia paused. It's good to hear your voice, Elena, despite everything. After hanging up, I turned back to the documents. Something about the original corporate charter caught my eye. A clause regarding succession that seemed to contradict itself in the various versions. Some referenced direct descendants, while others specified designated heirs. The discrepancy was subtle but significant. My medical training had taught me to notice inconsistencies, to question when patterns didn't align. What looked like careless drafting to the untrained eye screamed deliberate alteration to mine. I was so absorbed in my analysis that I nearly missed the soft knock at the door. Checking first that Lily remained asleep, I peered through the peephole, then stepped back in shock. Victoria stood in the dimly lit walkway, her formal attire replaced by jeans and a simple blouse, an outfit so casual I barely recognized her. I opened the door cautiously. We need to talk, she said without preamble. It's late, Victoria. Lily's asleep. My sister's gaze moved past me to the sleeping child. Something softened in her expression. She looks like Mom. The observation caught me off guard. Yes, around the eyes especially. We both stood awkwardly at this unexpected moment of connection. May I come in, just for a few minutes? I hesitated, then stepped aside. Victoria entered cautiously, like a visitor to a foreign country, her eyes cataloging the modest accommodations with poorly disguised dismay. You should have stayed at the Hawthorne Inn downtown. They would have— I couldn't afford it, I interrupted flatly. Not everyone has a trust fund, Victoria. Some of us work for a living. Her back stiffened. I work 18-hour days running a company that employs over 5,000 people. And I work 30-hour shifts putting people's bodies back together after trauma. We both work. The difference is you had a safety net. Victoria moved toward the window, creating distance between us. I didn't come here to compare hardships. Why did you come? She turned, her expression carefully composed. The attorney you met with this afternoon, Preston Davis. Did he tell you he's been trying to orchestrate a hostile takeover of Hawthorne Industries for the past 3 years? What? No, I've never met him before today. Mr. Whitmore recommended him when I mentioned needing separate representation. Whitmore, Victoria scoffed, always playing both sides. Davis has been attempting to acquire controlling interest through various shell companies. He's approached every minor shareholder, every retired executive with stock options. And now he's approached the sister who suddenly has claim to half the company, I concluded, understanding dawning. You think I'm conspiring with him? The timing is suspicious. I didn't even know Dad was dead until 2 days ago, Victoria. I certainly didn't orchestrate Grandmother's posthumous revelation. Lily stirred at my raised voice, turning over with a small murmur. We both froze, until her breathing deepened again. "What is it you actually want from me?" I asked, lowering my voice. Victoria seemed to deflate slightly, her defensive posture yielding to something more vulnerable. "I need to know if you intend to take control of the company. I have no interest in running Hawthorne Industries. I'm a surgeon, not a businesswoman." "But you'll claim your ownership share?" I studied my sister carefully, seeing beyond her composed exterior to the anxiety beneath. "I haven't decided. Yesterday I didn't think I had anything to claim. I'm still processing all this." Victoria nodded slowly, then reached into her purse and withdrew a slim folder. "These are the company's current financials and strategic initiatives. If you're going to be an owner, you should understand what you own." The gesture surprised me. It was both practical and oddly conciliatory. "Our quarterly board meeting is Monday morning," she continued. "Your presence would be, appropriate, given the circumstances. I have surgeries scheduled. I can't just attend virtually. We've upgraded our systems since you left." A ghost of a smile touched her lips. Even traditional companies must evolve. As Victoria prepared to leave, she paused at the door. "Elena, when did you have her?" "Lily." 6 years ago, I was in my surgical residency." Victoria nodded, something like regret crossing her features. "Dad had a stroke that year. I tried to call you. My number hadn't changed. I called, I just never pressed send." She straightened, professional mask sliding back into place. "The board meeting is at 9 Eastern Time. The login information is in the folder." After she left, I sat heavily on the edge of the bed, the weight of the past and present pressing down on me. Lily's small hand found mine in the darkness. "Was that your sister, Mom? She looks like you." I hadn't realized she was awake. "Yes, that was Aunt Victoria. Is she still mad at you?" Children's perception never ceased to amaze me. "It's complicated, sweetheart. Sometimes when people grow up together but make different choices, it's hard to understand each other. Like how Jamie gets mad when I want to read instead of play soccer with her." I smiled despite myself. "Something like that, but with more history." "Did you show her Grandma's letter?" "Not yet. She knows about it, though." Lily considered this with sleepy seriousness. "In school, Mrs. Patel says when we have problems with friends, we should use our words and explain our feelings. Mrs. Patel is very wise. You should try it with Aunt Victoria. Use your doctor voice. That's the one people listen to." My doctor voice. The authoritative tone I used when navigating chaotic trauma situations or delivering difficult news. Lily had heard me use it on phone consultations and had developed an unshakable faith in its effectiveness. "Maybe I will, sweetheart. Now back to sleep. We have a busy day tomorrow." After Lily drifted off again, I returned to the documents, viewing them now through a different lens. If Victoria was concerned enough about Preston Davis to come here, tonight there were deeper currents to navigate than just family reconciliation. I picked up grandmother's personal letter to me, which I hadn't yet read separate from the formal documents. "My dearest Elena, by now you will have read the formal notification regarding Hawthorne Industries. But there is a personal matter I must address with you alone. When you left, or rather when Robert forced you out, I wanted to intervene. Your grandfather counseled patience, believing that direct confrontation would only harden Robert's position and potentially expose certain vulnerabilities in the company's legal structure that could harm all of us if exploited by competitors. We established a trust in your name instead. The details are with Olivia Chen, who has maintained absolute discretion these many years. The trust contains not just financial assets, but your mother's personal journals. Catherine was much more than the quiet corporate wife Robert reduced her to in his revisionist family history. In her writings, you will find a reflection of yourself, a woman of principle and healing. Before illness claimed her, your mother was pioneering research in the pharmacological applications of traditional botanical remedies, research that Hawthorne's pharmaceutical division later commercialized without acknowledgement. You have inherited not just her compassionate spirit and determination, but legal claim to innovations that have generated billions in revenue for the company over the past 2 decades. The patent applications, with your mother's original signatures and notes, are preserved in the trust documentation. This information gives you significant leverage, more than just your inherited ownership stake. Use it wisely, not for revenge, which diminishes the wielder, but for restoration of truth and balance. Victoria is more like Robert than she realizes, or would wish to be. She needs the counterbalance of your perspective, just as Robert needed Catherine's temperance. Hawthorne Industries was built on the partnership of complementary strengths, not the dominance of a single vision. Whatever you decide, know that I have always seen you clearly and loved you completely, even when circumstances prevented me from showing it as I should have. With faith in your judgment, Grandmother Margaret. My hands trembled as I refolded the letter. My mother, the gentle presence who read me stories and taught me the Latin names of every plant in her solarium, had been a research scientist? Her work had been appropriated after her death? The revelation shifted something fundamental in my understanding of my family history. I had always believed I was the anomaly, the only Mercer drawn to science and medicine instead of business and finance. But I hadn't diverged from family tradition. I had unknowingly followed my mother's path. I pulled up the Hawthorne Industries website on my laptop, navigating to their pharmaceutical division. Their flagship products included a line of plant-based anti-inflammatory medications called NatraCure, developed, according to their marketing, by Hawthorne's innovative research team 15 years ago, right after my mother's death. Right after I'd been sent to boarding school, while Victoria remained home with father. I opened the company financial documents Victoria had provided. NatraCure represented 38% of the pharmaceutical division's annual revenue, nearly $2 billion annually. My mother's unacknowledged legacy, and potentially my most powerful tool for reclaiming my place in the family story. For the first time since returning to Hawthorne Springs, I felt something beyond grief and resentment. I felt purpose. Tomorrow's meeting with Olivia would reveal just how deep this deception ran, and Monday's board meeting would no longer be just a formality. I looked at Lily sleeping peacefully, unaware of the complicated legacy she had inherited. "We're not finished yet," I whispered. "Not by a long shot." Grounds for thought occupied the renovated space of what had once been Hawthorne Springs' oldest hardware store. The original brick walls and exposed wooden beams remained, now complemented by modern pendant lighting and sleek furniture. It represented exactly the kind of thoughtful preservation and innovation that Hawthorne Springs had once been known for before pure profit became the driving force. I arrived early, securing a corner table away from the morning rush of professionals grabbing coffee before heading to their offices. Many wore company badges or clothing with the distinctive Hawthorne Industries logo, a stylized H entwined with a laurel branch, symbolizing victory and prosperity. Several patrons glanced my way, their expressions shifting from casual interest to recognition and whispered conversation. News of my return had clearly spread beyond Victoria's immediate circle. I focused on my coffee, grateful for the distraction of my phone as I reviewed hospital emails and checked in with my surgical team back in Boston. "Still a coffee addict, I see." Olivia's voice pulled me from my screen. She stood before me, elegant in a charcoal pantsuit, her dark hair now styled in a sophisticated bob rather than the wild curls of our youth. "Some things never change." I rose to greet her, unsure of the appropriate protocol after 7 years of silence. Olivia eliminated the awkwardness by pulling me into a brief but genuine hug. "You look exactly the same," she said, settling into the chair across from me. Surgical residency is apparently excellent for preserving youth. Nothing ages you when you're too exhausted to develop new wrinkles. She laughed, the same bright sound I remembered from our teenage years spent hiding in the Hawthorne Library, mocking the pretensions of our parents' social circle, still deflecting compliments with humor, I see. Some coping mechanisms are too valuable to abandon. I smiled, then turned serious. Thank you for reaching out, Olivia. I wasn't expecting allies here. She signaled to the barista who nodded. In recognition, clearly irregular. I'm not sure I qualify as an ally yet. More like a concerned custodian of information. A server delivered a cappuccino without Olivia having to order. I've managed your grandmother's account since my father's retirement, including the trust she established for you. The one she mentioned in her letter. Olivia nodded, sipping her coffee before continuing. Margaret was a remarkable woman, brilliant and strategic in ways that made Robert look like an amateur, though he never realized it. She created a significant safety net for you, structured in a way that Robert could never touch. Why didn't she tell me? She tried. Olivia's expression grew somber. She hired private investigators to locate you after you left. By the time they found you, you were deep in medical school, working multiple jobs. She sent letters to your apartment in Chicago. Memory stirred, a series of formal-looking envelopes that had arrived during my second year of medical school. Envelopes I'd assumed contained legal threats from my father and had returned unopened. I never read them, I admitted. I thought they were from my father's attorneys. Understandable, given the circumstances of your departure. Olivia reached into her briefcase and withdrew a sealed manila envelope. This contains everything you need to access the trust. It's substantial, Elena, enough to ensure you and Lily would never need to worry about financial security again. The envelope sat between us, representing a lifeline I'd never known existed during years of struggling to pay tuition while keeping a roof over my head. There's more, Olivia continued. The trust includes copies of your mother's research, journals, and patent documentation. After reviewing these materials following your grandmother's instructions, I engaged a pharmaceutical patent attorney for a confidential assessment. She paused. NaturaCure's fundamental formulations are unquestionably based on your mother's work. My father stole her research. Not exactly. Catherine Mercer was legally employed by Hawthorne Pharmaceuticals. Under normal circumstances, her work would indeed belong to the company. Then what? She filed personal patent applications before submitting the research through official company channels. According to private correspondence between your parents that Margaret preserved, there was an agreement that your mother would receive credit as the primary researcher and a percentage of revenues directed to a foundation focusing on botanical medicine research. Let me guess, that never happened. Olivia shook her head. After your mother died, Robert buried her involvement entirely. The original research was attributed to the department collectively, with Dr. James Westfield as principal investigator. The name struck a chord. Westfield was at our house often when I was young, Mom's research colleague. And according to your grandmother's private notes, her research assistant. Not her equal and certainly not her superior. Olivia leaned forward. Elena, the evidence your grandmother compiled presents a clear case of intellectual property, misappropriation. If this became public, it wouldn't just damage Hawthorne Industries financially through legal settlements. The reputational harm could be catastrophic. The implications were staggering. Victoria doesn't know, does she? No. Robert compartmentalized information ruthlessly. Victoria runs the company brilliantly, but even she doesn't have complete visibility into historical decisions made before her leadership. I sat back, processing this information. So I now have ownership claim through grandmother's letter and potential legal leverage through Mom's stolen research. Yes, which makes you extremely dangerous to certain parties who've benefited from the status quo, including Preston Davis. My conversation with Victoria last night suddenly took on new significance. Victoria said Davis has been trying to orchestrate a hostile takeover. Davis represents a consortium of investors who've wanted to dismantle Hawthorne Industries for years, selling off its profitable divisions and liquidating the rest. The company has considerable real estate holdings and intellectual property that would be worth more broken apart than as a unified entity. And now I've unwittingly aligned myself with him. He approached you with remarkable speed after your arrival. That suggests he had advance knowledge of Margaret's letter and its contents. Olivia's expression turned grave. Few people had access to that information, Elena. Someone positioned you as a weapon against Victoria. The coffee turned bitter in my mouth as implications crystallized. Using me to destabilize company leadership, creating the perfect opportunity for a takeover. I pushed away my cup. I need to speak with Victoria immediately. Carefully, Olivia cautioned. Victoria has been fighting to maintain control of the company against various threats for years. Her perspective is shaped by constant defensive positioning. She may not immediately accept your changed intentions. Then I need to show her rather than tell her. I gathered the documents Olivia had provided. What time does the main Hawthorne building open on Saturdays? Administrative offices are closed, but Victoria is typically there by 8. She practically lives in that office. I checked my watch. 7:30. I need a favor. Can you watch Lily for an hour? She's still asleep. At the motel, but I don't want to leave her alone. Olivia's expression softened. Of course. She's Catherine's granddaughter, too. It would be my honor. The Hawthorne Industries headquarters dominated the town center, a 12-story glass and steel structure, designed by a famous architect to symbolize transparency and strength, according to the company literature. The irony wasn't lost on me as I approached the security desk in the soaring lobby. Dr. Elena Mercer to see Victoria Mercer, I told the guard confidently. He consulted his screen, frowning. I don't see an appointment, ma'am. It's a family matter. I presented my driver's license. I'm her sister. His eyebrows rose slightly. One moment, please. He picked up his phone, speaking quietly before turning back to me. Ms. Mercer says she'll see you. 11th floor. Her assistant. We'll meet you at the elevator. The executive floor was hushed and empty on a Saturday morning. The only sound the gentle hum of climate control and the click of my shoes against marble flooring. A young woman in a tailored suit waited at the elevator doors, her expression professionally neutral despite what must have been rampant curiosity. Dr. Mercer, I'm Heather Watts, Ms. Mercer's executive assistant. Please follow me. Victoria's office occupied the building's northeast corner, offering panoramic views of both the town and the distant mountains. Floor-to-ceiling windows eliminated any sense of enclosure, creating instead the impression of commanding the landscape itself. My sister sat behind a massive desk of polished walnut, the surface organized with military precision. Behind her hung a portrait of our father in his prime, stern and imposing in an impeccable suit. No image of our mother was visible anywhere in the space. This is unexpected, Victoria said, dismissing her assistant with a slight nod. I assumed we'd next meet at Monday's board meeting. Plans change when you discover you're being manipulated by outside forces. I placed Preston Davis's business card on her desk. Did you know Davis was directly involved with grandmother's estate planning? Victoria's expression remained carefully neutral. I was aware he had professional contact with her, not the extent of his involvement. He helped orchestrate her posthumous letter with full knowledge of its contents and implications, then positioned himself to represent me immediately after its revelation. I laid out the trust documents Olivia had provided. He's been playing a much longer game than either of us realized. For the first time, I saw genuine surprise breach Victoria's composed facade. How did you discover this? Olivia Chen, She's been managing grandmother's financial affairs, including a trust established for me years ago. The Chens. Victoria's voice held grudging respect. Always meticulously prepared and frustratingly ethical. She rose, moving to the window. What exactly do you believe Davis's endgame to be? Using family discord to facilitate a hostile takeover. Creating enough leadership instability that shareholders lose confidence. Victoria turned back to me, studying my face. Carefully? And why are you telling me this? The question cut to the heart of our estrangement. The fundamental distrust that had defined our relationship for years. Because whatever happened between us, this company is our family's legacy. Mine as well as yours. I moved to stand beside her at the window, looking out over the town our great-grandfather had essentially built. I have no interest in dismantling what generations have created. Even after being cut out of it for 7 years? I chose to leave, Victoria. That doesn't mean I wanted everything destroyed. A heavy silence fell between us, filled with unspoken history. Finally, Victoria asked, "What do you propose?" A united front. I attend Monday's board meeting not as an adversary, but as a newly recognized co-owner aligned with current leadership. That's a significant reversal from your position yesterday. Yesterday, I didn't know I was being used as a corporate Raider's pawn. I hesitated, then continued. There's something else you need to know about Mom's research and NatraCure. Victoria's posture stiffened almost imperceptibly. What about it? I handed her the file containing copies of our mother's original patent applications and correspondence. This might be difficult to process. For the next 20 minutes, Victoria read in complete silence, her expression transitioning from skepticism to shock to a cold anger I recognized from our childhood, the contained fury that emerged whenever she felt betrayed. Father assured me that Westfield was the primary researcher, she finally said, her voice unnaturally controlled. That Mother's involvement was supportive at most. He lied to both of us, in different ways. To me about my worthiness, to you, about our mother's legacy. Victoria placed the documents carefully on her desk, her movements precise. If this becomes public, it won't, not from me. I met her gaze directly. I'm not interested in destroying Hawthorne Industries' reputation or undermining the good it does. But I am interested in correcting the historical record and ensuring Mom's contribution is recognized. How? Establish the Catherine Mercer Foundation for Botanical Medicine Research. Fund it properly from NatraCure revenues. The arrangement, that should have happened originally. And add her name to the historical company records as the primary developer of NatraCure's core formulations. Victoria considered this, her analytical mind visibly processing implications. The foundation could actually enhance our corporate reputation if structured correctly. Position it as recently discovered documentation revealing the previously uncredited contributions of Catherine Mercer. Frame it as the company doing the right thing once information came to light, I agreed, rather than a decades-long concealment. You've developed a surprisingly sophisticated understanding of corporate reputation management, Elena. I've managed a trauma department through multiple public relations challenges. Some principles translate across fields. The ghost of a smile touched Victoria's lips. Indeed. She straightened, decision made. I'll have legal draft the foundation. Documents immediately. We can announce it at Monday's board meeting, presenting a unified response to both grandmother's letter and this new information about Mother. And Davis? Victoria's expression hardened. Leave Davis to me. He's underestimated both Mercer sisters, it seems. As I prepared to leave, Victoria called after me. Elena, there's a family dinner at the estate tonight. Private chef? Just key executives and their families. It would be appropriate for you and Lily to attend. The invitation wasn't warmly delivered, But its significance wasn't lost on me. It represented Victoria's first acknowledgement of my place in the family structure. "We'll be there," I promised. 7 o'clock, business casual. Victoria turned back to her computer, already shifting to implementation mode. "And Elena, bring the remaining documents from Grandmother's Trust. We should understand exactly what we're dealing with." Walking back through the quiet lobby, I felt an unfamiliar lightness. Not reconciliation. We had too much history for such a simplistic resolution. But perhaps the beginning of something new. Something built on mutual respect and shared purpose rather than competition and resentment. Outside, the morning sun illuminated the town square, where a statue of my great-grandfather stood watchful over the community he'd helped establish. I'd passed it countless times growing up, but today I stopped to truly look at the inscription on its base. Prosperity. Without purpose is merely wealth. Build something that outlasts you. Perhaps, I reflected, that something wasn't just the company or its buildings, but the connections between those left to steward it forward. Connections that could be rebuilt with sufficient courage and clarity. I pulled out my phone to call Olivia and check on Lily. It was time to prepare my daughter to meet her extended family, not as outsiders seeking admission, but as rightful members bringing their unique strengths to a shared legacy. "Mom, is this okay?" Lily twirled in front of the motel mirror, showcasing the navy blue dress we'd purchased that afternoon at the town's only children's boutique. The shopkeeper had recognized me immediately, her eyes widening as she connected my face to the Mercer family portraits that had appeared in local business publications for generations. "You look beautiful, sweetheart." I adjusted the small silver necklace around her neck, a gift from Olivia, who had insisted on joining our impromptu shopping expedition. The pendant was a delicate silver microscope, a nod to both my medical career and my mother's scientific work that Lily was beginning to understand. "Will there be other kids?" Lily's excitement was tinged with nervousness. As an only child, raised primarily around adults in a hospital environment, she had developed remarkable poise, but sometimes struggled with peer interactions. "I'm not sure." The realization highlighted how little I knew about my sister's life now. Did Victoria have children? Had any of the executives from my father's era retired, replaced by younger leaders with families? We'll find out together. Olivia had offered to drive us to the estate, sparing us the indignity of arriving in our rental compact car. As we traveled the familiar winding road through manicured grounds approaching the mansion, I felt Lily's hand slip into mine. "It's really like a castle," she whispered, her eyes wide as the house came into full view, lights glowing warmly in the early evening darkness. "Your great-grandfather built it," Olivia told her. "He wanted to create something that would last for generations, that would always welcome home his family, no matter how far they traveled." The pointed look she gave me didn't go unnoticed. Olivia had always been skilled at delivering gentle rebukes wrapped in historical context. "It's just a house, Lily," I said softly. "What matters are the people inside." "And the people coming home to it," Olivia added, pulling up to the circular drive where a valet waited to park arriving vehicles. The grandeur that had seemed oppressive yesterday felt different tonight, viewed through my daughter's wondering eyes. Where I saw the weight of expectations never met, Lily saw magic and possibility. Her perspective was a gift, one I needed to embrace rather than contaminate with old resentments. Victoria herself opened the door, a departure from protocol that signaled the evening's personal rather than professional nature. She had exchanged her corporate armor for an elegant but understated cocktail dress, her hair loosened from its usual severe styling. "Welcome," she said, with what appeared to be genuine warmth. Her gaze immediately went to Lily, softening visibly. "You must be my niece. I'm your Aunt Victoria." Lily, never shy, stepped forward with hand extended. "I'm Lily Mercer. Thank you for inviting us to your castle, Aunt Victoria." A startled laugh escaped Victoria, perhaps the most unguarded sound I'd heard from her in decades. "It's not exactly a castle, but you're very welcome here." She bent slightly to meet Lily at eye level. "Would you like to see the portrait gallery? It has paintings of our family going back 5 generations. "Can I, Mom?" Lily looked back at me, bouncing slightly with excitement. "Of course." I smiled, trying to mask my surprise at Victoria's unexpected overture toward my daughter. "Excellent. The other guests are gathered in the main drawing room," Victoria informed me, gesturing down the hallway. "I'll bring Lily to join everyone after our tour." As they walked away, Lily's small hand tucked trustingly in Victoria's, my sister glanced back at me with an expression I couldn't quite interpret, something between apology and invitation. Olivia squeezed my arm reassuringly. "First steps. Breathe." The drawing room hummed with conversation as we entered, about 20 people in small conversational clusters, most holding crystal tumblers or wine glasses. I recognized several faces from my childhood. Harrison Wells, now apparently Chief Operating Officer according to his recent introduction. Sophia Martinez, who had been a junior finance executive during my father's tenure and now served as CFO. And scattered throughout, other familiar figures from Hawthorne Industries' upper management. Conversations faltered momentarily as heads turned toward us, recognition dawning. I straightened my spine, summoning the same confidence I projected when entering a chaotic trauma bay. "Dr. Mercer, welcome home." Sophia Martinez approached first, offering her hand. "Your return has been the topic of considerable speculation." "I imagine it has," I replied evenly, accepting her handshake. "Though I hope we can move beyond speculation to productive collaboration." "Indeed." Her gaze was assessing but not hostile. "Victoria mentioned you've established quite a reputation in trauma surgery. Boston General's emergency department is ranked among the nation's best." The fact that Victoria had apparently shared this information, had known this information to share, caught me off guard. It's been a challenging and rewarding path. "Not unlike Victoria's leadership journey here," Sophia observed. "Different domains, similar dedication. Your father would have been—" She stopped herself, perhaps recognizing the potential minefield of invoking Robert Mercer's hypothetical approval. "Conflicted, at minimum," I finished for her, with a small smile to ease the tension. "But then, complex feelings run in the family." The evening progressed with surprising ease. My initial trepidation gave way to measured engagement as I navigated conversations with Hawthorne executives who had known me as a child, but were now meeting me as a professional equal. There was curiosity in their questions about my medical career, genuine interest rather than the condescension I had anticipated. Harrison Wells cornered me near a display of family photographs as servers circulated with hors d'oeuvres. "Your grandmother would be pleased," he said, nodding toward a silver-framed image of Margaret Mercer in her prime, regal and formidable in her signature pearl necklace. "She never agreed with how your father handled your departure." "You were close. To her?" I accepted a glass of sparkling water from a passing tray. "I was her protégé before Robert brought me into the executive team." Harrison's admission surprised me. "She recruited me from business school, mentored me for 3 years, then strategically positioned me where I could be most effective. As a counterbalance to my father's more aggressive tendencies," I guessed, remembering how grandmother had often spoken of balanced leadership in the family business. Harrison smiled. "Precisely. Your grandmother believed sustainable success required both innovation and stability, aggression and restraint, vision and practicality. She saw those balanced qualities in the original partnership between your great-grandparents." He gestured toward the oldest photograph, showing a stern-faced man with a slighter, keen-eyed woman at his side. "And she recognized when that balance was lost under your father's leadership. Yet she didn't directly challenge him. Margaret was strategic, not confrontational. She played the long game." His gaze met mine meaningfully, rather like positioning certain executives throughout the company structure who shared her values, or establishing trusts that would activate at precisely the right moment. Understanding dawned. You knew about my trust, about grandmother's letter. Not the specific contents or timing, but the general intent. Harrison sipped his whiskey contemplatively. Several of us have been maintaining what Margaret built, waiting for the right moment to restore balance to Hawthorne Industries. Victoria suspects this. She's aware of certain factions within the company leadership. She's intelligent and perceptive. His expression grew serious. But she's also her father's daughter in many ways. Brilliant, but sometimes blind to perspectives that don't align with her vision. I processed this revelation, reassessing the evening's dynamics. The friendly reception wasn't merely courtesy, but strategic alignment. How many of the executives here tonight are part of what you're calling Grandmother's Balance Initiative? About half. The others are Victoria's appointments, talented and valuable, but primarily loyal to her vision. And where does Preston Davis fit into this equation? Harrison's expression darkened. Davis is an opportunist who discovered portions of Margaret's plan and attempted to exploit it for his investment group's benefit. He's been trying to drive wedges between potential allies, including between you and Victoria. The complexity of corporate politics I'd walked into was dizzying, far removed from the straightforward intensity of emergency medicine, where priorities were clear and measured in minutes and lives, not decades and dollar signs. Dr. Mercer? A young woman approached, tablet in hand. Ms. Mercer asked me to inform you that dinner will be served in 15 minutes. She and your daughter are in the library and would like you to join them. I thanked her, then turned back to Harrison. It seems I'm being summoned to the inner sanctum. Indeed. He smiled. A promising sign. Victoria rarely invites anyone into the library these days. It was your father's private domain. And now hers. Not entirely. Harrison's gaze was knowing. The library belongs to the current head of the Mercer family. By traditional succession and now by legal documentation, that position is shared. The implication hung between us as I excused myself, making my way through the house with muscle memory rather than conscious navigation. The corridors hadn't changed in my absence, the same ancestral portraits marking generations of Mercer success, the same subtle shift in architectural details as wings built in different eras connected. The library double doors remained as imposing as I remembered, heavy oak carved with the family crest, simultaneously inviting and forbidding. I hesitated before knocking, memories surfacing of being summoned to this room for my father's stern evaluations of school performance or behavior. Come in, Victoria's voice called. The space beyond had transformed since my last visit. My father had maintained it as a masculine sanctuary, dark woods, leather furnishings, hunting trophies on the walls. Victoria had lightened it considerably, replacing heavy drapes with sheer panels that framed the night view, substituting some of the more imposing furniture with elegant alternatives in warmer tones. But the most striking change was the wall behind the massive desk. Where my father had displayed military memorabilia and business awards, Victoria had created a gallery of Mercer women, portraits of our mother, grandmother, and great-grandmother, hung in a tasteful arrangement, their collective gaze watching over the room's occupants. Lily sat cross-legged on a plush window seat, utterly absorbed in what appeared to be a family photo album. Victoria stood near the bookshelves, replacing a volume in its precise location. "Mom!" Lily looked up excitedly. Aunt Victoria showed me pictures of you when you were little. You had braces. Historical documentation is merciless, I replied lightly, moving to see what memories my daughter was exploring. The album was one I'd never seen, carefully preserved photographs of Victoria and me as children. Us building sandcastles on the private beach of our summer home, opening Christmas presents in matching pajamas. Victoria patiently teaching me to ride a bicycle, her hand steadying the seat as I pedaled with determined concentration. "Where did these come from?" I asked, unexpectedly moved by these tangible reminders of the bond we'd once shared. "Mother kept them," Victoria answered, joining us at the window seat. "After she died, Father had her personal belongings moved to storage. I found these albums when I was reorganizing the estate last year." The revelation that our mother had maintained this careful chronicle of sisterly connection while our father had literally warehoused it felt painfully symbolic. "You were nice to each other," Lily observed, pointing to a photo of Victoria bandaging my skinned knee with the serious focus of an older sibling tasked with caretaking. "What happened?" The directness of children, unerring in identifying. The heart of adult complications. Victoria and I exchanged glances, momentarily united in the challenge of explaining complex family dynamics to a 7-year-old. "Sometimes," Victoria began carefully, "when people grow up, they develop different ideas about what's important, and if they don't talk about those differences properly, they can grow apart instead of growing together. Like when Zoe and I fought about whether science or art was more important," Lily reasoned. "But then Mrs. Patel showed us how they need each other, like for medical illustrations." Victoria looked surprised, then impressed by the sophisticated connection. "That's actually quite insightful, Lily. Yes, somewhat like that. Is that why you're a business person and Mom's a doctor? You thought different things were important?" I sat beside my daughter, choosing my words carefully. "Partly, but it's also because we each found different ways to use our strengths. Aunt Victoria is excellent at organizing complex systems and making difficult decisions. I'm good at staying calm in emergencies and fixing problems that need immediate attention." "Companies and people," Victoria added with unexpected self-awareness. "Systems and individuals. But now you're trying to work together again?" Lily pressed, her young face serious with the effort of understanding adult reconciliation. Victoria and I shared another glance, a silent negotiation of how to characterize our evolving detente. "We're rediscovering how our different strengths might complement each other," Victoria offered diplomatically. "Rather than conflict." I nodded in agreement. Sometimes it takes stepping back to see the complete picture. "Like when you make me finish all my homework before judging if I did good?" Lily asked me. "You say, 'Let's assess the full body of work.'" I laughed despite myself. "Exactly like that. We're trying to look at the full picture now, not just the parts we disagreed about." Victoria checked her watch, an elegant timepiece that had belonged to our grandmother. "We should join the others for dinner, but before we do..." She moved to the desk and unlocked a drawer, removing a small velvet box. "I found this among Mother's things. It should have gone to you years ago." She handed me the box, which felt substantial despite its small size. Inside nestled a silver pendant, a delicate rendering of intertwined branches supporting a small nest of pearl eggs. "Her botany necklace," I whispered, memory surfacing with surprising clarity. Our mother had worn it when working in her greenhouse laboratory, explaining once that it represented how scientific knowledge grew like branches, supporting new life and discovery. "She wore it when she was doing her research," Victoria confirmed. "There was a note with it indicating it should pass to you when you began your medical studies. I only found it recently." The gesture felt monumental, not just the return of a meaningful heirloom, but Victoria's acknowledgement of our mother's wishes and my legitimate place in the family legacy. "Thank you." I closed my fingers around the pendant, its familiar contours connecting me to my mother in a way portrait galleries and formal estates never could. "It's pretty," Lily said, examining the necklace with careful fingers. "Like science jewelry." "That's exactly what it is," Victoria agreed, then surprised me by adding, "Your mother understands the science in our family's blood, just like your grandmother did." Before I could respond, a discreet knock announced the young assistant again. "Dinner is served, Ms. Mercer." "Thank you, Rebecca." Victoria nodded. We'll be right there. As we prepared to join the others, Victoria paused at the library doors. Elena, after dinner, there's something I need to show you in Father's private study. Documents I discovered yesterday that may change our approach to Monday's board meeting. Something concerning? Something illuminating, she replied cryptically. About Mother's research and Father's actions that neither of us could have anticipated. The evening that had begun with tentative reconnection was evolving into something more significant, a joint excavation of buried truths that might reshape not just our personal relationship, but the future of Hawthorne Industries itself. As we entered the dining room, conversations paused briefly as executives noted our joint arrival. I felt Lily's small hand slip into mine while Victoria took her place at the head of the table, gesturing for me to take the vacant chair to her right, the traditional position for the second highest-ranking family member. The symbolism wasn't lost on those gathered. Whispers and significant glances circulated as I took my seat, Harrison Wells catching my eye with a subtle nod of approval from further down the table. Ladies and gentlemen, Victoria addressed the gathering with practiced ease. As we enjoy tonight's meal, I'd like to officially welcome my sister, Dr. Elena Mercer, and my niece Lily, back to Hawthorne Estate. Their return represents an important reunion for our family and potentially valuable new perspective for our company as we move forward. Glasses raised in acknowledgement, and I found myself meeting Victoria's gaze with newfound understanding. We were far from resolving decades of separation and hurt, but we had taken the first steps toward something neither of us had experienced in years, the possibility of collaborative strength rather than isolated excellence. The pendant rested in my pocket, a tangible reminder of scientific legacy that connected 3 generations of Mercer women. Whatever revelations awaited in my father's study, I would face them not as an outsider seeking admission, but as a rightful inheritor of a complex but powerful legacy. Dinner concluded with polite conversation and strategic introductions, Victoria smoothly integrating me into discussions about Hawthorne Industries' current initiatives. I observed her leadership style with professional appreciation, the way she balanced authority with attentiveness, steering conversations while appearing to merely facilitate them. In another life, she would have made an excellent chief of surgery, commanding the operating theater with the same assured presence she brought to this dining room. Lily, seated between us, had charmed the assembled executives with her precocious questions about the business. What exactly does Hawthorne Industries make? She'd asked Harrison Wells with such earnest curiosity that even the most reserved board members had smiled. Many things, he'd answered thoughtfully. Medicines that help people heal, materials that help build safer buildings, and technologies that help doctors like your mother save lives. So you make things that fix problems? Lily had clarified, reducing the complex corporate structure to its essence. In the best of times, yes, Victoria had interjected. That's precisely what we try to do. As coffee and dessert were served, I noticed Lily struggling to suppress yawns despite her determination to participate in this adult world. Olivia, sensing her fatigue, offered to take her back to the motel. She can stay here, Victoria suggested, unexpectedly. The East Wing guest suite is prepared. There's the adjoining room for you as well, Elena. The invitation represented another significant step, from reluctant reception to overnight accommodation in the family home. That's very thoughtful, I replied. Lily, would you like to stay in the big house tonight? My daughter's eyes widened. With excitement, fatigue momentarily forgotten. Can I really? Does it have a princess bed? Victoria's laugh seemed to surprise even herself. Not precisely princess-themed, but certainly worthy of a young lady of your discernment. Rebecca can show you to the room while your mother and I finish our business discussion. As the dinner party dispersed and Lily was escorted upstairs by the attentive assistant, Victoria led me toward a section of the house I'd rarely entered as a child. My father's private study had been separate from the library, a sanctum within, a sanctum where even Victoria had seldom been welcomed. "He kept this locked at all times," Victoria explained, producing a small key from her pocket. "After the funeral, I found the key labeled in his personal safe. I've only begun exploring its contents this week." The door opened to reveal a space that felt frozen in time, a perfectly preserved capsule of Robert Mercer's private world. Unlike the library, which Victoria had modernized, this room remained exactly as my father had left it. Dark wood paneling, heavy velvet drapes drawn against the outside world, and a pervasive scent of leather and the cigars he'd smoked despite my mother's health concerns. "I never knew this room existed," I admitted, taking in the space with a physician's observational thoroughness. "Few did. Mother never entered it, to my knowledge. He called it his strategic planning center, but I believe it was primarily a refuge from family obligations." Victoria's assessment held no bitterness, just clinical detachment, a trait we apparently shared. She moved directly to a painting on the far wall, a rather mediocre landscape that seemed out of place among the fine art displayed throughout the rest of the house. "Watch," she instructed, pressing something at the frame's edge. The painting swung outward, revealing a wall safe. A hidden safe behind a painting? That seems theatrically paranoid, even for father. Indeed, his affection for spy novels apparently influenced his personal security measures. Victoria entered a combination into the digital keypad. The code was my birth date, followed by his father's birth date. Notably, not mother's or yours. The safe door opened to reveal neatly organized file folders, each labeled in our father's precise handwriting. Victoria withdrew one marked CM Project, Contingency. "I found this yesterday while searching for his personal will addendums. The contents are illuminating." She handed me the folder, watching my face carefully as I opened it. The first document was a confidentiality agreement between Robert Mercer and Dr. James Westfield, dated 2 weeks after our mother's funeral. It outlined terms for attributing research and development credit for what would later become the NatraCure line, with substantial financial compensation for Westfield's cooperative professional discretion. In essence, it was a contract for scientific erasure, my mother's name replaced with Westfield's in exchange for significant stock options and a guaranteed executive position. "He paid Westfield to steal Mom's recognition," I said flatly, anger rising like bile. "Keep reading," Victoria directed, her voice unnaturally controlled. The next document revealed something far more complex, a letter from our father to our mother, never sent, dated 3 days before her death. "Catherine, the board's reaction to your presentation confirmed my worst fears. They see the pharmaceutical division as our heritage, our unassailable market position. Your revelations about the limited efficacy of our flagship analgesics compared to your plant-based alternatives represent an existential threat to their understanding of our company's value. Harrison suggested a gradual transition, phasing out the synthetic compounds while introducing your formulations as premium alternatives. Pearson Montgomery rejected this outright. They've invested too heavily in our current manufacturing infrastructure to contemplate such a fundamental pivot. I find myself in an impossible position. As CEO, I cannot ignore the transformative potential of your research. As chairman, I cannot force a transition that might destabilize shareholder confidence and destroy value built over generations. The compromise I've proposed privately to key board members is acquisition rather than replacement, developing your formulations as a new product line while maintaining existing offerings. This preserves both innovation and stability. I haven't told you this because I know you view it as ethical capitulation, continuing to sell products we now know are less effective than alternatives. Perhaps it is, but corporate transformation cannot happen overnight without casualties. When you recover, and you will recover, we can implement the longer-term strategy of gradually elevating your research to its rightful prominence. The 5-year transition plan I've outlined to the board positions your botanical formulations as the company's future, while allowing for responsible business continuity. Rest now. Focus on healing. The company will eventually embrace your vision, even if the path isn't as direct as either of us might wish. With admiration for your brilliance and love despite our differences, Robert. I looked up from the letter. Its implications reshaping my understanding of family history. He was trying to protect her research while managing corporate politics, but she died before he could explain. Victoria nodded, her composure finally showing cracks of emotion. And, rather than implementing her vision posthumously as intended, he buried it, along with her contribution, out of what appears to be grief and guilt. The next document confirms this, she continued, turning the page for me. A handwritten journal entry, dated a month after our mother's funeral. The board approved Westfield's promotion today with unanimous enthusiasm. They believe Catherine's research died with her. Only Westfield and I know the comprehensive documentation, she maintained, the revolutionary approach she developed while fighting her own illness. I told myself this temporary deception serves the greater good, maintaining market stability while we transition gradually toward her methods. But tonight, watching Elena at the piano playing Catherine's favorite Chopin piece, I recognized the deeper betrayal. Catherine's legacy isn't just her science, but her ethical clarity. She would never condone this compromise, this burying of truth for corporate convenience. I've instructed legal to quietly secure patents for her complete methodology, recorded properly in company documents but sealed in confidential archives. When the time is right, perhaps when Elena completes her education and can appreciate her mother's scientific contribution, the full attribution will be restored. Until then, I will bear the weight of this decision alone. Margaret suspects something amiss, but hasn't challenged me directly. She never approved of how I managed the board's old guard, believing I should have forced modernization rather than negotiated it. Perhaps she's right. The girls remain my priority, protecting their futures, their inheritance. Victoria shows remarkable aptitude for business already at 16. Elena has Catherine's questioning mind, her refusal to accept conventional wisdom. Without evidence, Catherine would want them to become their fullest selves, even if those selves reflect different aspects of our partnership. I will ensure the company remains strong enough to support whatever paths they choose. The journal entry continued onto another page, but Victoria gently took the folder, closing it. There are dozens more entries. The narrative evolves, or rather, devolves. His initial intention to restore Mother's recognition gradually transforms into rigid protection of the status quo. Grief calcifies into an inflexible defense of decisions made in its midst. And his relationship with us mirrors that transformation, I observed, the psychological pattern suddenly clear. His initial desire to nurture our different strengths hardens into insistence that Victoria follow his exact path while I abandon mine. Victoria moved to the study's small bar cart, pouring 2 fingers of our father's favorite scotch into crystal tumblers. She handed one to me without asking if I wanted it, a presumption I found oddly comforting in its familiarity. I've been angry with you for 7 years, she said abruptly, looking not at me but at the amber liquid in her glass. Angry that you left when things became difficult. Angry that you abandoned the company, the family, our shared responsibility to what the Mercers built. She took a measured sip before continuing. I told myself you were selfish, pursuing your own interests rather than honoring your obligations. I never considered that you might have been the braver one, refusing to accept the constraints Father's grief had created for both of us. The admission hung in the air between us, not quite an apology, but something potentially more valuable. Recognition. I wasn't brave, I countered, tasting the smoky scotch that had always reminded me of arguments behind closed doors. I was desperate. I couldn't breathe in the role he'd assigned me. The disappointing daughter who asked too many questions, who wouldn't simply accept the narrative I was given. While I became the perfect reflection, never questioning the image expected of me. Victoria's voice held no self-pity, merely clinical assessment, until I began finding these documents. Reading grandmother's private correspondence, discovering mother's research journals that father had preserved despite supposedly erasing her contribution. She set down her glass with deliberate care. He was a more complicated man than either of us understood. Neither the corporate tyrant of your experience nor the visionary leader of mine. Just a man broken by grief, making decisions he believed would protect what remained of his world. Understanding doesn't excuse the damage done, I noted, thinking of the years lost between us, the relationship my daughter had been denied with her only aunt, the scientific legacy my mother never received. No, it doesn't, Victoria agreed. But it provides context for moving forward. The question becomes, how do we honor mother's actual legacy rather than father's distorted protection of it? She moved to the safe again, withdrawing another folder, this one newer, bearing her own handwriting. CM Foundation, Preliminary Structure. I've spent the past 24 hours working with legal to draft this, she explained, handing me the documents. A comprehensive proposal for the Catherine Mercer Foundation for Botanical Medicine, including full scientific recognition of her contributions to NatraCure, dedicated research facilities continuing her work, and educational initiatives supporting women in scientific innovation. I scanned the detailed proposal, recognizing the thoroughness that had made Victoria a formidable CEO. This is extraordinary. It's not enough, she acknowledged, but it's a beginning. The board will resist aspects of it, particularly the public acknowledgement of previously unattributed research. But as co-owners with a unified position, our combined leverage is considerable. Co-owners, I repeated, testing the concept. You've accepted grandmother's arrangement, then? I've recognized its potential benefits. Victoria's practical framing made me smile, despite the emotional weight of our discoveries. Your outside perspective combined with my institutional knowledge creates a more balanced leadership approach than either of us could provide individually. She hesitated, then added, I have no interest in running a trauma department, and I suspect you have equally little desire to manage quarterly earnings reports. But together, we might finally restore the partnership model that built Hawthorne Industries, complementary strengths rather than consolidated control. The proposition represented far more than a business arrangement. It was an invitation to rebuild what had been broken, not just corporate governance, but family connection. Lily will need to return to Boston for school, I said, considering practical implications. My surgical practice can be maintained with appropriate scheduling adjustments. Victoria completed my thought with characteristic efficiency. Boston is a 90-minute flight. Board meetings occur monthly. Modern executives manage bi-coastal responsibilities routinely. You've thought this through. Strategic planning is what I do. She smiled slightly. While you excel at immediate crisis intervention, different approaches, equally valuable in their contexts. Outside the study windows, dawn was beginning to lighten the sky. We had talked through the night, excavating family history and potentially building a new future in the process. We should get some rest before Lily wakes, I suggested, suddenly, aware of the exhaustion behind my eyes. Tomorrow will bring its own challenges. Indeed, Preston Davis has requested a meeting before the board convenes. No doubt to assess whether his strategy to divide and conquer remains viable. Shall we enlighten him together? I proposed, feeling the first genuine spark of sisterly conspiracy in decades. Victoria's smile transformed her face, erasing years of careful composure. I believe that would be most illuminating for all parties involved. As we left our father's study, locking away its secrets but carrying forward its revelations, I realized we had begun something our grandmother had envisioned, but perhaps never fully believed possible. Two Mercer women, different in approach, but aligned in purpose, reclaiming a legacy that belonged to both of us. And in the process, perhaps healing wounds that had seemed beyond repair just days before. Monday morning arrived with the clarity that often follows emotional upheaval. I woke in the East Wing guest suite, my childhood bedroom having been redecorated years ago, with a sense of purpose I hadn't anticipated when first driving up to Hawthorne Estate mere days before. Lily had already risen, evidenced by the rumpled, but empty adjoining bed. A note on the nightstand in Victoria's precise handwriting informed me that my daughter was enjoying breakfast in the sunroom with Rebecca, who apparently shared Lily's enthusiasm for marine biology. The domesticity of the arrangement struck me as both foreign and familiar, like returning to a childhood language partially forgotten but still instinctively understood. The Mercer household had always functioned with well-orchestrated logistics, family members moving through their days with support staff, ensuring frictionless transitions between activities. After showering, I found a garment bag hanging on the closet door that hadn't been there the night before. Inside was a tailored, charcoal pantsuit with a cream silk blouse, exactly my size, with the discreet label of my preferred designer. A small note accompanied it. For the board meeting, Victoria. The gesture spoke volumes. My sister had not only remembered my measurements but my aesthetic preferences, despite our years of separation. More significantly, she had selected an outfit that complemented her own executive style while remaining distinct, not attempting to make me a carbon copy of herself, but recognizing my professional identity. I dressed quickly, appreciating the perfect fit that only bespoke tailoring achieves. In the adjoining bathroom, I secured my mother's botanical pendant around my neck, a tangible connection to her legacy as I prepared to help restore her scientific recognition. The sunroom echoed with Lily's laughter as I entered, a sound so incongruous in the formally appointed Mercer household that it momentarily stopped me in the doorway. My daughter sat cross-legged on a wicker chair, her breakfast half-eaten as she and Rebecca examined something on a tablet between them. "Mom, Rebecca's showing me the aquarium they're building downtown. Hawthorne Industries is sponsoring a whole reef exhibit with real conservation scientists working there. Can we visit before we go home?" The question carried unintended complexity. When was home? What did "before we go" mean now that our relationship with Hawthorne and its namesake company was evolving so rapidly? "We'll certainly try to visit," I answered diplomatically. "Is Victoria already in her office?" Rebecca nodded. "Ms. Mercer left for headquarters at 6. She asked me to ensure you and Lily had everything needed this morning, and to inform you that Mr. Davis has confirmed a 9:30 meeting ahead of the board session at 11. "Perfect timing," I noted, checking my watch. "Lily, will you be all right with Rebecca this morning while I attend some meetings with Aunt Victoria? Can I swim in the pool I saw yesterday?" My daughter's priorities remained refreshingly straightforward. Rebecca smiled. "The pool is heated year-round, Dr. Mercer. I'm a certified lifeguard as well as Ms. Mercer's assistant." Of course she was. Victoria would hire nothing less than multi-talented perfection. "Swimming sounds perfect then. I'll call when the meetings conclude." I kissed Lily's forehead, inhaling the familiar scent of her shampoo, a grounding reminder of our real life in Boston amid this surreal return to my past. A driver waited outside to transport me to Hawthorne headquarters, another quiet efficiency, arranged by Victoria. During the short drive, I reviewed notes on my tablet, the key points Victoria and I had agreed upon during our late-night strategy session, the documentation supporting our unified position, and contingency approaches for various board reactions. Hawthorne Tower gleamed in the morning sunlight, its glass exterior reflecting clouds and blue sky, a visual metaphor for the corporate transparency that had been more aspiration than reality under my father's leadership. Security expected me, providing an executive access badge without hesitation. "Dr. Mercer, welcome to Hawthorne Industries," the security director greeted me with surprising warmth. It's an honor to have you with us today. Word had clearly spread about my return and newfound position within the company hierarchy. The politeness that had seemed strained during my first visit had transformed into something approaching genuine respect, or at least its professional facsimile. Victoria waited in her office, reviewing documents with her general counsel, a sharp-featured woman in her 50s introduced as Meredith Sloan. "Elena, right on time," Victoria noted with approval. "Meredith has prepared the formal documentation, recognizing your position as co-owner and board member, effective immediately upon presentation at today's meeting." "Pleasure to meet you, Dr. Mercer." Meredith offered her hand with a firm grip. "I've taken the liberty of registering your medical credentials with our Pharmaceutical Regulatory Division. Your expertise will be invaluable as we restructure research protocols." The presumption of my ongoing involvement might have irritated me days earlier, but now felt like prudent preparation rather than manipulation. "Thank you, Meredith. I look forward to contributing where my background provides relevant perspective." Victoria dismissed her counsel with a nod. Once we were alone, her professional veneer softened slightly. "Sleep well?" "Better than expected," I admitted. "Thank you for the suit. Perfect choice." I remembered your preference for Stella McCartney's more practical designs. Victoria's attention to such details reminded me of our mother, who had always observed preferences others missed. Preston Davis arrived 15 minutes ago. He's cooling his heels in the third-floor conference room, undoubtedly rehearsing whatever pitch he believes will sway you to his coalition. Shall we disappoint him jointly? Victoria's smile held genuine mischief, an expression I hadn't seen since we were teenagers planning to raid the kitchen after our parents' dinner parties. "Let's." We took the executive elevator down to the third floor, an united front entering. "The Lion's Den." Preston Davis rose as we entered, a polished man in his 50s with the practiced charm of someone accustomed to getting his way through strategic persistence. "Dr. Mercer, what a pleasure to see you again," he began, then registered Victoria's presence with poorly concealed surprise. "Ms. Mercer, I wasn't expecting you until our scheduled meeting. I thought it more efficient to join you both," Victoria replied smoothly. "Given that my sister and I now share ownership and decision-making authority for Hawthorne Industries." Davis recovered quickly, adjusting his approach with the adaptability that had likely served him well in corporate acquisitions. "Wonderful. Family unity is always the ideal outcome in these situations. I'm delighted to see you've reached an amicable arrangement." "More than amicable," I corrected. "We've discovered aligned interests and complementary strengths. The Mercer partnership model continues, it seems, despite attempts to create division." Davis's expression remained pleasant, but his eyes hardened slightly. "I'm not sure what you're implying, Dr. Mercer. My sole focus has been ensuring your rightful place in the company your family built." A peculiar dedication to justice from someone who has systematically attempted to dismantle that company through 3 separate takeover strategies in recent years, Victoria noted, opening a folder containing documentation of his previous efforts, including approaching our retired CFO, attempting to leverage minority shareholders, and most recently, exploiting potential family discord. I leaned forward, medical directness replacing corporate subtlety. "Did you know about my grandmother's letter before my father's death, Mr. Davis? The timing of your appearance in my orbit seems suspiciously well coordinated." Davis straightened his already impeccable tie, a nervous tell. "Margaret Mercer was a client of our firm for many years. Client confidentiality prevents me from discussing specific arrangements. Fortunately, attorney-client privilege doesn't survive the client's death when fraud may be involved," Victoria countered. "Meredith has already spoken with the ethics committee at your firm. Your senior partners were unaware of your private communications with certain board members regarding potential acquisition strategies contingent on leadership instability." The color drained slightly from Davis's face. "I've done nothing illegal, Exploring potential business arrangements is standard practice in my field. Perhaps, I acknowledged. But attempting to manipulate family reconciliation for financial gain crosses ethical boundaries, if not legal ones. Victoria smoothly continued our coordinated approach. The board will be presented today with documentation of these concerning patterns, along with our recommendation to terminate Hawthorne's relationship with your firm effective immediately. You're making a significant mistake, Davis warned, his charm evaporating. The consortium I represent has the capital and influence to make things very difficult for Hawthorne Industries if provoked. Interesting threat, I observed. 1. The SEC might find noteworthy in light of your recent stock acquisitions through shell companies. Victoria allowed the slightest smile. My sister maintains the Mercer observational acuity, it seems. Nothing escapes her attention once properly focused. Davis gathered his documents with barely controlled anger. This isn't over. Hawthorne Industries has vulnerabilities you haven't yet discovered. Family sentiment won't protect market position when your pharmaceutical patents begin expiring next quarter. As he stormed out, Victoria and I exchanged knowing glances. Our mother's research, properly attributed and protected with updated patents, would secure the company's market position regardless of existing patent expirations. He'll attempt countermeasures, Victoria noted practically. Let him. We have truth on our side, along with comprehensive documentation and the moral high ground. I smiled at my sister's raised eyebrow. What? Ethical positioning matters in corporate battles, just as in medical malpractice defenses. You've developed unexpected business instincts for a surgeon, and you've shown surprising emotional intelligence for a CEO. The exchange contained no barbs, only mutual recognition of growth neither had witnessed in the other during our years apart. As we prepared to enter the boardroom for the formal meeting, Victoria paused. Whatever happens in there, know that I'm grateful for your return, Elena, not just for the company's benefit, but for what it means to our family's wholeness. The admission clearly cost her something, vulnerability never having been rewarded. In Robert Mercer's household, I squeezed her arm briefly in acknowledgement. Some broken things, when properly repaired, become stronger at the fracture points, I offered. In medicine, we call it callus formation in bone healing. Perhaps families follow similar principles. The boardroom fell silent as we entered together. 14 executives seated around a massive table of sustainable teak, a material innovation Hawthorne Industries had pioneered a decade earlier. Portraits of past company leaders lined the walls, my father's stern visage most recently added. What struck me, viewing the gallery with fresh perspective, was the consistent pattern throughout our corporate history. Always pairs of complementary leaders navigating different aspects of the company's growth. My great-grandparents, my grandparents, even my parents briefly before my mother's research was sidelined. The pattern had been disrupted only during my father's solo leadership and Victoria's subsequent isolation at the top. Today, we would restore that balanced model. Victoria took her customary place at the head of the table, gesturing for me to join her in the chair, newly added to her right, physically positioning us as equal partners before the assembled leadership. Ladies and gentlemen, she began with, practiced authority, today marks a significant transition in Hawthorne Industries' governance and future direction. Recent revelations from my grandmother Margaret Mercer's estate have clarified ownership structures established in the original company charter. She nodded to Meredith, who distributed documents to each board member. The legal department has verified these findings, confirming that Hawthorne Industries properly belongs in equal partnership to both Mercer sisters as direct descendants of the founding family. Murmurs circulated around the table, some surprised, others knowingly satisfied, suggesting Harrison's assessment of divided loyalties within the executive team had been accurate. I present to you Dr. Elena Mercer, trauma surgeon, who joins our leadership effective immediately, Victoria continued, Her scientific expertise and outside perspective will complement our existing strengths as we address several critical initiatives. She nodded to me, seamlessly transferring the floor. I stood, feeling the weight of my mother's pendant against my skin. Thank you, Victoria. While my return to Hawthorne Springs was unexpected, I've come to recognize it as necessary. Not just for family reconciliation, but for institutional integrity. I activated the presentation screen, displaying our mother's research journals and patent applications. Our first order of business concerns scientific attribution and intellectual property protection. The revolutionary formulations behind NatraCure, Hawthorne's most profitable pharmaceutical line, were developed by my mother, Dr. Catherine Mercer, whose contribution has remained unacknowledged for 2 decades. Gasps and whispers erupted around the table. Victoria raised a hand, restoring order with practiced efficiency. Today, I continued, we correct this historical oversight while simultaneously securing Hawthorne's market position. The Catherine Mercer Foundation for Botanical Medicine will honor my mother's legacy while advancing the research methodologies she pioneered. For the next 30 minutes, Victoria and I alternated presenting our unified vision, addressing legal documentation, marketing strategy, research initiatives, and governance adjustments with complementary expertise. Where I provided scientific context, Victoria outlined implementation logistics. When I emphasized patient impact, she quantified market potential. Throughout the presentation, I observed the board members' reactions, initial shock giving way to calculated assessment, and, eventually, strategic enthusiasm as they recognized the potential benefits of our approach. By the meeting's conclusion, even the most skeptical executives had contributed constructive suggestions for implementation. The final vote to approve our proposed changes, including my formal appointment to the board and the establishment of the Catherine Mercer Foundation, passed unanimously, a result Victoria later confided was unprecedented in Hawthorne's recent history. As executives filed out, many stopped to welcome me personally, their initial wariness replaced by professional curiosity about what my medical background might contribute to various divisions. Harrison Wells lingered last, his satisfaction evident. "Margaret would be proud," he said simply. This is exactly the restoration of balance she envisioned. Once we were alone, Victoria exhaled deeply, the first sign of tension she had displayed throughout the entire proceedings. That went better than anticipated. The power of thorough preparation and irrefutable documentation, I noted. Though, I suspect your years of building credibility with the board created the foundation for their receptiveness. And your clinical precision in presenting evidence provided the compelling framework. Victoria allowed herself a genuine smile. We make a rather formidable team, it seems. Who would have thought? I mused, remembering our childhood competitions for our father's approval. Competitions that had never served either of us well. My phone buzzed with a message from Rebecca, a photo of Lily beaming poolside, hair dripping wet, clearly thriving in her unexpected extended stay at Hawthorne Estate. Victoria glanced at the image. She belongs here too, you know, not just as a visitor, but as part of the legacy. The next generation of Mercer women. The observation carried implications neither of us was quite ready to fully articulate, about permanence, about future roles, about the geographical and professional adjustments our new partnership would require. One step at a time, I suggested. Today we reclaim the past. Tomorrow we can begin mapping the future. Victoria nodded, practical as always. Reasonable approach, though I've taken the liberty of having real estate listings prepared for properties within reasonable distance of both headquarters and the medical center, where you could potentially establish surgical privileges. I laughed despite myself. Of course you have. Some things never change. Some things shouldn't, she countered with unexpected warmth. The Mercer thoroughness has served generations well. As we left the boardroom together, equals in purpose, if still finding our balance in relationship, I felt a sense of completion that had eluded me throughout my professional achievements. The surgical skills I had developed, the lives I had saved, all meaningful and valuable. But this reconciliation, this restoration of both family connection and historical truth, represented healing of a different order entirely. The portrait, gallery of Hawthorne leaders watched our departure, generations of partnerships that had built something lasting through complementary strengths rather than isolated brilliance. Soon, Catherine Mercer's image would join them, her scientific contribution finally acknowledged. And someday, perhaps, two sisters might be added to that legacy wall, different in approach but united in purpose, having rediscovered that sometimes the most profound strength emerges not from separation, but from connection. 3 months passed with remarkable swiftness. Spring had arrived in Hawthorne Springs, the town's namesake cherry trees, erupting in delicate pink blossoms that drifted across manicured lawns and collected in fragrant drifts along the Central Park pathways. The seasonal renewal seemed fitting, for the transformation underway at both the company and within our reconstructed family. I stood at the window of what had once been my father's office at Hawthorne Tower, now redesigned as a shared executive space that Victoria and I occupied during my bi-weekly visits from Boston. The wall that had once displayed Robert Mercer's military honors and business awards now featured a gallery of significant Hawthorne innovations throughout its history, including, prominently, a preserved page from my mother's research journals, displayed alongside the first NatraCure patent, newly reissued with proper attribution. My phone buzzed with a message from Lily's teacher. Science fair project on plant-based medicine won first place. She's ecstatic. Attached was a photo of my daughter beaming beside her display board titled, "From Greenhouse to Pharmacy, How My Grandmother Changed Medicine." The judges had been particularly impressed by her inclusion of actual botanical specimens from the Hawthorne estate gardens, where she now spent every other weekend under the careful tutelage of the grounds staff. The transition hadn't been seamless. Nothing meaningful ever is. Rebalancing my surgical responsibilities in Boston while establishing a presence at Hawthorne had required careful negotiation, both professionally and personally. Boston General had initially balked at my proposed schedule modifications until the Catherine Mercer Foundation offered a substantial research grant for their trauma department. Victoria's strategic suggestion that transformed resistance into enthusiastic accommodation. Admiring the view or avoiding the Finance Committee report? Victoria's voice carried a hint of amusement as she entered the office, immaculately dressed as always, but with a softer edge to her appearance that had emerged gradually over our months of collaboration. "Celebrating Lily's science fair victory," I replied, showing her the photo. "Her teacher says 3 pharmaceutical companies sent representatives this year. Apparently one offered her an internship when she reaches high school." Victoria smiled, genuine pride illuminating her features. Impressive, though not surprising given her genetics and that remarkable mind. She placed a leather portfolio on the desk between us. "The final proposal for the Catherine Mercer Botanical Research Center. Construction can begin next month if you approve the architectural plans." The research center represented the cornerstone of our mother's restored legacy, a state-of-the-art facility dedicated to advancing her pioneering work in plant-based pharmaceuticals. Located on Hawthorne property but operated as an independent scientific institute, it would attract researchers from around the world while maintaining the ethical research protocols our mother had valued. "The laboratory configurations were excellent," I noted, reviewing the detailed plans. "The integration of greenhouse spaces with analytical facilities mirrors Mother's original vision." "With significantly advanced technology," Victoria added. "The spectroscopy equipment alone represents capabilities she could only have dreamed of." She would have appreciated the open collaborative spaces. Her journals repeatedly mentioned the limitations of isolated research. Victoria nodded, settling into the chair opposite me. The foundation announcement has generated substantial interest in the scientific community. We've received over 200 applications for the first round of research fellowships. And the scholarship program? Fully funded for the next 5 years, 15 young women pursuing degrees in pharmaceutical sciences will receive complete financial support beginning this fall. The Catherine Mercer Scholarship for Women in Science had been my personal priority, ensuring that future generations of female scientists wouldn't face the institutional barriers our mother had encountered. Victoria had not only embraced the concept, but expanded it, adding mentorship programs and guaranteed internships within Hawthorne's research divisions. The board's quarterly review is tomorrow, Victoria continued, seamlessly transitioning to our next priority. Preston Davis has been notably quiet since our confrontation, which concerns me more than his active opposition did. His investment. Consortium sold their remaining Hawthorne stock last week, I informed her. According to Harrison's financial intelligence, they've redirected their acquisition strategy toward Medicor Pharmaceuticals. Our primary competitor in the botanical medicine space, Victoria observed, brow furrowing. Potentially concerning. Given their access to certain distribution channels we've been unable to penetrate. This was our working dynamic at its most effective. My external network providing critical intelligence that Victoria's internal resources then contextualized within market realities. Separate spheres of influence converging to create comprehensive understanding. I've invited Dr. Westfield to the foundation launch, I said, changing subjects to our most sensitive ongoing challenge. Victoria's expression tightened almost imperceptibly. James Westfield remained a complicated figure in our reconstructed narrative, the man who had accepted credit for our mother's research while believing he was following our father's legitimate corporate strategy. Is that wise? His presence could create unnecessary controversy. Or demonstrate remarkable institutional maturity, I countered. Westfield has agreed to speak publicly about the collaborative nature of scientific discovery and the importance of proper attribution. He's prepared to acknowledge Mother's primary contribution while contextualizing his own role in bringing her formulations to market. Victoria considered this with the thoughtful analysis I had come to respect. A redemptive narrative rather than a punitive one, potentially elegant from a public relations perspective. And more aligned with what Mother would have wanted, I added softly. Her journals reveal no personal animosity, only commitment to scientific integrity. The delicate balance between corporate strategy and ethical restoration had defined our partnership over these months. Where Victoria instinctively calculated market perception and shareholder value, I advocated for transparency and principle. Neither approach alone would have achieved what our combined perspective had accomplished. The restoration of Mother's scientific legacy has proceeded more smoothly than I anticipated, Victoria admitted, rising to pour coffee from the sideboard, a habit she had adopted during our long strategy sessions. The pharmaceutical division's researchers have embraced her methodologies with remarkable enthusiasm once given full access to her original journals. Scientists generally recognize brilliant work when institutional barriers are removed, I noted, accepting the cup she offered. The real resistance was never scientific, but structural. Like so many things. Victoria's observation carried layers of meaning beyond corporate politics. Our own relationship had required dismantling similar structural barriers, years of enforced competition and misunderstanding orchestrated by our father's grief-distorted priorities. Have you reviewed the property listings? Victoria asked, her tone deliberately casual despite the significance of the question. My potential relocation from Boston to Hawthorne Springs represented the final piece of our reconstructed family puzzle. The geographical commitment that would transform our bi-weekly collaboration into a permanent shared vision. I've narrowed it to 3 possibilities, I acknowledged. The lakefront property has particular appeal given Lily's newfound interest in aquatic ecosystems. The boat dock would allow her to continue the water sampling project she started with Rebecca. Victoria nodded, satisfaction evident despite her attempt at neutrality. Hawthorne Medical Center's board approved your trauma department proposal yesterday. Chief of surgery with autonomy to structure the department according to Boston General's protocols while maintaining your position there on a consulting basis. You've been busy, I observed, not without appreciation for her thoroughness. Simply ensuring all variables are optimized for decision-making, she replied with characteristic precision. The trauma center represents a significant community benefit while providing professional continuity for your surgical practice. The dual appointment leverages your expertise across institutions while minimizing career disruption. I smiled at her methodical approach to what was, fundamentally, a deeply personal family matter. And of course, Lily's educational transition has been equally well arranged. Westridge Academy has an exceptional science curriculum, Victoria confirmed without a hint of self-consciousness about having researched every aspect of my daughter's potential relocation. Their headmaster was particularly interested in Lily's botanical research project and has offered access to their advanced laboratory facilities despite her young age. The comprehensive groundwork Victoria had laid for our potential permanent reunion represented her native language of care. Not emotional declarations, but practical provisions for every contingency, every potential obstacle removed before it could materialize. We've come a long way from that first confrontation in the solarium, I observed, remembering the tension that had defined our initial reunion. From adversaries to allies in 3 months. Victoria's expression softened with rare vulnerability. From strangers back to sisters, you mean? The simple acknowledgement contained more emotional resonance than lengthy declarations. Victoria had never been comfortable with explicit sentiment, a trait we shared despite our many differences. The foundation launch next week will make it official, I noted. The restoration of Mother's legacy and the public recognition of our partnership in leading Hawthorne forward. The media interest has been substantial, Victoria confirmed. The narrative of sisters reunited through their mother's scientific discovery, while transforming a traditional corporation, has captured public imagination beyond our industry. People respond to stories of reconciliation and redemption, observed. Particularly when they involve both justice and healing rather than simple retribution. A knock at the door interrupted our conversation. Harrison Wells entered, tablet in hand and concern evident in his usually composed features. Forgive the interruption, but we have a situation developing that requires immediate attention, he announced without preamble. Preston Davis has just been announced as Medicorp's new Chief Strategy Officer, with specific responsibility for their botanical pharmaceutical division. Victoria straightened, instantly alert. Timing is suspiciously aligned with our foundation launch. There's more, Harrison continued, swiping through documents on his tablet. Medicorp has filed patent challenges against 3 key NatraCure formulations, claiming their researchers independently developed similar compounds. They're petitioning for expedited review. The strategic attack was elegant in its timing, attempting to undermine both our public celebration of Catherine Mercer's contributions and the market position those innovations secured. They're using Davis's inside knowledge of our research methodology to construct their challenge, I realized, the pattern immediately clear to my diagnostician's mind. He can't replicate Mother's specific formulations, but he can contest the breadth of our patent protections based on his understanding of her approach. Victoria was already in motion, activating the conference screen and connecting to Hawthorne's legal department. Meredith, assemble the patent defense team immediately. Davis has made his move through Medicorp. As the room transformed into an impromptu war room, executives and legal counsel joining remotely and in person, I was struck by the seamless coordination between Victoria's crisis management and my analytical assessment. Where once we might have pursued competing strategies, we now operated with instinctive synchronization. her business acumen, and my scientific understanding, creating a response greater than either could have developed alone. 3 hours later, our counter-strategy was in place, a comprehensive defense of our mother's innovation that would not only protect Hawthorne's market position, but potentially strengthen it through additional patent applications based on her previously unrevealed research notes. Davis underestimated what we would discover in Mother's complete journals, Victoria noted with grim satisfaction as our emergency session concluded. The supplementary patents we're filing based on her extended research actually broaden our protection beyond the original NatraCure formulations. He assumed we'd found everything already, I agreed. But Mother's work was decades ahead of her time. We're still uncovering applications she theorized that technology is only now capable of implementing. As the executives filed out, leaving Victoria and I alone once more, the symmetry of our situations struck me with unexpected clarity. Our mother's hidden legacy, preserved but unrecognized for decades, had not only reunited her daughters but equipped us with precisely the resources needed to defend her scientific contribution when threatened. We should proceed with the foundation launch as planned, Victoria decided, her strategic mind already calculating next steps. The publicity surrounding Mother's innovations will establish public recognition of her work ahead of any legal challenges. And we should accelerate the scholarship announcements, I added. Highlighting the next generation of female scientists continuing her methodology creates a narrative of ongoing innovation rather than historical dispute. Victoria nodded approvingly. Precisely. Davis wants to frame this as a technical legal challenge. We'll position it as an attack on scientific attribution and women's contributions to pharmaceutical advancement. As we refined our response strategy, I realized how profoundly our relationship had evolved. The sister who had once seemed to have taken everything following our father's death had become my most valuable ally in preserving something far more precious than material inheritance, the truth of our mother's genius and the restoration of our family's authentic legacy. You know, I said as we concluded our planning, Grandmother's letter didn't just change the game regarding Hawthorne Industries, it changed the game for us as sisters. Victoria considered this with characteristic thoughtfulness. She was always the strategist, calculating moves far beyond immediate consequences. Perhaps this was her ultimate intention all along, not simply legal redistribution, but familial reconciliation. Using truth as the catalyst rather than force, I agreed. Revealing rather than compelling. Outside the office windows, Hawthorne Springs stretched toward the horizon. The company our ancestors had built integrated seamlessly into the community they had helped establish. But now, for the first time in generations, that legacy was being shepherded not by a single dominant vision, but by complementary perspectives working in genuine partnership. The game had indeed changed, not just in who possessed what, but in how we defined possession itself. The truth, once revealed, had transformed competition into collaboration, scarcity into abundance, isolation into connection. And in that transformation lay the greatest inheritance our grandmother could have possibly restored. Not shares of stock or corporate titles, but the recognition that our differences had always been our greatest strength, waiting only for the courage to embrace them. Together, the Catherine Mercer Foundation launch was scheduled for a Thursday afternoon in late April when Hawthorne Springs reached peak cherry blossom season. The company had transformed the central atrium of Hawthorne Tower into a botanical wonderland, living displays of the medicinal plants central to our mother's research arranged throughout the soaring space, interspersed with interactive exhibits explaining the science behind natural pharmaceutical development. The media presence exceeded even Victoria's meticulous projections. Not only had industry publications sent representatives, but mainstream outlets had dispatched science and business correspondents, drawn by the compelling narrative of scientific attribution restored and family reconciliation in the context of corporate leadership. Camera crews positioned equipment throughout the venue while photographers captured the living museum we had created to honor our mother's work. I stood in the small preparation room adjacent to the atrium, making final adjustments to my presentation notes while Victoria reviewed last-minute security protocols with the event team. The Medicor patent challenge had escalated tensions beyond normal corporate rivalry, prompting enhanced vigilance for the high-profile event. "The governor just arrived," Victoria informed me, checking her tablet for real-time updates from the security team, along with the university chancellor and representatives from 3 national scientific associations. "Any sign of Preston Davis or Medicor executives?" I asked, securing our mother's botanical pendant around my neck, now a talisman for significant Hawthorne occasions. "Nothing yet, though our intelligence suggests they've scheduled a press conference at their headquarters for tomorrow morning." Victoria smoothed her already immaculate suit jacket, a subtle navy that complemented my burgundy ensemble, our sartorial choices reflecting our distinct but harmonized leadership approach. Their timing is predictably designed to diminish our announcement's impact. Yet they'll be responding to our narrative rather than establishing their own, I pointed out. Reactive rather than proactive positioning. Victoria smiled with genuine appreciation. "Your strategic thinking continues to evolve impressively." "I had an excellent teacher," I acknowledged, recognizing how much I had absorbed from observing her corporate leadership over recent months, just as she had incorporated elements of my more direct communication style into her own approach. "Aisai." Knock at the door announced Olivia Chen, who had become an invaluable ally in navigating both family and corporate transitions. 10 minutes until the program begins," she advised. "Lily is already seated in the front row with Rebecca. She's wearing the junior lab coat from the research division and taking her role as future scientist quite seriously." The image brought smiles to both Victoria and me. My daughter had embraced her expanding family connection with characteristic enthusiasm, particularly the discovery that her scientific interests reflected a multi-generational legacy. The specialized lab coat, complete with Mercer Research Team embroidery, had been Victoria's gift after Lily's science fair victory, an acknowledgement of her place in our family's intellectual tradition. "Dr. Westfield has arrived," Olivia continued, her tone carefully neutral. "He appears somewhat uncomfortable but committed to his role in today's program." Victoria tensed slightly. James Westfield's participation remained the most controversial element of our carefully orchestrated event, the man who had accepted unearned credit for our mother's innovations now participating in the public restoration of proper attribution. Some executives had argued against his inclusion, suggesting his presence might distract from the celebration of Catherine Mercer's work. "Discomfort is appropriate given the circumstances," Victoria observed with characteristic pragmatism, but his public acknowledgement of Mother's primary research contribution creates a more comprehensive narrative than simply erasing him from the story. "Redemption rather than retribution," I agreed, the phrase having become something of a mantra in our approach to rectifying historical injustices without creating new ones. As we prepared to enter the atrium, Harrison Wells appeared with an urgent update. Medicor just issued a press release challenging the fundamental ownership of Catherine Mercer's research. They're claiming that her employment contract with Hawthorne Pharmaceuticals at the time of her work grants them partnership rights to her innovations through a complicated chain of historical acquisitions. Victoria's expression hardened. "Desperate maneuvering. Their legal standing is tenuous at best, but sufficient to create market uncertainty ahead of the foundation launch," I noted, immediately grasping the strategic implication. "They're attempting to undermine confidence in our intellectual property protections." Harrison nodded. "Exactly. Their stock rose 4% on the announcement, while ours has dipped marginally as investors process the implications." Victoria checked her watch with characteristic precision. "We have 7 minutes before the program begins. Options?" This immediate pivot to solution-focused analysis rather than emotional reaction had become our standard approach to crisis management. Victoria's business instincts complemented by my emergency medicine experience in rapid decision-making under pressure. We proceed as planned with one addition, I decided after a moment's consideration. I'll address the Medicore challenge. Directly in my remarks, framing it as further evidence of the historical pattern we're working to correct, profit prioritized over scientific integrity. Risky, Victoria cautioned. Meredith advised against public commentary on active legal challenges. Sometimes the clinical approach requires addressing the underlying infection rather than just managing symptoms, I countered. Medicore is counting on our corporate restraint. A direct, principled response from a medical professional, rather than a business executive, changes the narrative dimension entirely. Victoria considered this, her analytical mind visibly processing the potential scenarios. You'd speak as Catherine Mercer's daughter and a physician rather than as Hawthorne leadership. Exactly. A personal rather than corporate perspective, though the distinction provides strategic advantage. A slow smile spread across Victoria's face, the expression I had come to recognize as appreciation for particularly elegant problem-solving. Approved. Harrison. Alert communications to adjust the media briefing materials accordingly. As Harrison departed to implement these changes, Victoria and I shared a moment of silent communication, the unspoken recognition of how seamlessly we had integrated our different approaches into a unified response strategy. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.